I can see the jittery, the nervousness. Look, it's just us up in here.
Here's the thing, it's just us.
Get out the vote. Love that. All right, 3, 2, 1. This is Just Us Podcast. I am Fabian, my co-host.
Dean.
This is a special edition, 2024 Get Out the Vote. Our first panelist is Mrs. Stacey Allen Barrow. Go ahead and introduce yourself. Tell them why you're here.
Hello, everyone. My name is Stacey Allen Barrow, Barrow. I am the Democratic nominee for the 487th Criminal District Court, where I am seeking to be the first judge elected to this bench. And this court serves the entirety of Harris County, handling felonies, meaning anything punishable by a year and up to the death penalty. So very serious work, and I look forward to a very serious and informative conversation. Thank you for having me.
Great for you to be here.
Thank you.
And our second panelist, Mrs. Kyara Ofwani. Introduce yourself. Let us know.
Yes, thank you guys for having me. I'm Kyara Ofwani, a nonprofit attorney, and I'm also running for Justice of the Peace, Precinct 7, Place 1. I'm an independent write-in candidate, and I'm here really just to remind us about family, community, and having a community-first mindset and contributing to the liberation.
And panelist number 2, Mrs. Shelley Baker.
My name is Shelley Baker. I am currently the political director of Deeds Not Words, but for the last couple years, I've worked with voter engagement in Black communities in Houston, and then recently in the last couple of years shifted towards youth voter engagement and youth voter education.
Panelist number 4, last but not least, Mr. Roshan C. Evans. Go ahead and let us know.
Yes, sir. My name is Roshan C. Evans. I'm the organizing director and co-founder of Pure Justice, where we work to bring fairness and equity to the criminal justice system, as well as create economic opportunities for marginalized groups. The pillars we work around is criminal justice reform, economic justice reform, and racial justice reform.
Now, I want to get right into it. For those that are, on the ballot, November 5th, we coming down to it. Why should they vote for you all?
Well, I'm asking for your vote against Stacey Allen Barrow, because right now I serve as a felony associate judge. I was appointed 2.5 years ago to work in these same felony courts. And as I sat on different judges' benches, have my own dockets, I've handled well over 1,500 felony matters as an associate judge, so I have a good grasp on the perspective that I bring to the bench as a judge. And one of the things that I noticed that really prompted me to run for this elected position was that every day I would have young people coming straight from the juvenile justice system into felony court, where we're handling the most grievous and serious of matters. And it became clear to me that if we didn't do things differently, we're going to lose an entire generation of young men and women, mostly those who are Black and Latino. And as an Afro-Latina from Panama, it was imperative for me to say, although I've never wanted to run for politics, how could I sit in this position and have a vision for what could be different and see the consequences of doing things the same and not put myself out there for the benefit and the betterment of our community. So that is why I'm running, and that's why I'm asking for your vote. I believe that we all have a role to play in ensuring that we live in communities where we feel safe and where we can thrive. This is my I and the collective we, and I want to continue to collaborate with you in doing that work. So that's why I'm asking for your vote. And here's, since we're talking about this, and I don't know if I'm jumping ahead, I'm running as a Democrat. Right now, if you live in Harris County, you have been bombarded with ads about other people claiming that Democrats are soft on crime and we're somehow letting everybody who's harming people out. I just want to say that that's not true. Crime is down under the current leadership, and although there's clearly room for improvement, because that's why I'm running, I want you to question people who you've never seen step in your community, who don't live around you, who kids don't play with you, who you'll never meet at the local meat market in the quote-unquote hood where a billion people like me live, right? Like, I live in the inner city. I know the consequences of my decisions. I live with them every day. I know that there are challenges in my neighborhood, but I also know that there are beautiful opportunities and beautiful people who deserve love and protection just like anybody else. And so you should question anybody who will never step in your neighborhood and only has to offer you fear and no substantive things that they want to do in order to elevate your community. So that's why I think it's important to vote, and that's why I'm asking for your vote.
Love that.
Love it.
Kyara.
Yeah, Yes, I'll hop right into it. So a vote for Kyra is a vote for family and a vote for a community first mindset. Specifically, the position that I'm running for is a more local position, so specifically Precinct 7. That is the 3rd Ward, 5th Ward, Sunnyside area. And so I'm running for this position because this community's triumphs and its failures are of my own. As I live in this community, I went to law school in the community, Thurgood Marshall School of Law. I go to church in this community. So I am actively being affected by the things that are happening and contributing to the way that we liberate. When we are encountering the JP courts, this is the first time that most of the community members are encountering the legal system in general, because we handle more financial cases like housing, inhabitability, debt, consumer truancy, and things of that nature. A lot of our community members are losing their cases simply because they don't have legal knowledge or the resources. And so I want to add in more pro se litigant resources, whether that's using AI tools or having specific legal clinics, so that we have an even playing field. Because if our community is already struggling financially, if they go into the court and then get their wages garnished or get fines, that's not going to contribute to our liberation. The other thing that I want to add is more modernization of the court. Currently, the JP courts are not a court of record. So we're screaming and crying discrimination, but we have no track record or evidence of that discrimination. So we need to be able to hold our judges, our attorneys accountable for the things that are happening, and that can be done through having a court reporter, having the court streamlined, and using those technology things. And then the final piece that I'm adding to the court is more restorative justice measures. So we do handle small misdemeanors, mainly truancy. And so what we do know is when it comes to truancy, the community members are generally getting this because they don't have transportation, maybe there's lack of food or something like that at home. Kids aren't just missing school because they're missing school. The current administration is simply just telling the parents about the law, and that's not helping because there's still a high case of over 5,000 cases that were filed in truancy in Precinct 7 last year. And so my approach is to affect the root cause. That's where my skills of being a nonprofit attorney come in, having more grant funding that we can utilize, and being able to actually give people a helping hand. The main thing that I want people to focus on is having more of a community mindset and focusing on the qualifications of the role. Right now, JP does not require you to be an attorney to be the judge of that court. So the current sitting judge is not a lawyer or an attorney, and that can be problematic if you don't have legal training to interpret the law. The incumbent and me and the community members are all saying pro se litigants need legal resources. So if the pro se litigants need an attorney to interpret the law, why would it not logically make sense that then the judges need legal training as well? If we need lawyers to be able to help the community members, then we also then need a lawyer in that seat to interpret the law. And so those are just some other things. I want to mainly focus on the nonprofit community side of it, and then also be able to utilize my legal skills. And so I am a write-in independent candidate, and that's mainly why I need the community to learn about the write-in process, because sometimes we can be swayed on just the programming of, oh, okay, we're going to vote Democrat, okay, we're going to vote Republican, and that's all fine and dandy, but both sides have problematic things that aren't contributing to the liberation for Black and brown individuals. So I want the community to start having an independent mindset and looking at their moral principles and looking at the strategies that will actually help us as a whole. Thank you.
Now, Roshan, listening to these beautiful young women of color trying to get into our justice system, trying to change things. You are a man for justice, fighting your own battles, the battles that you've went through. What do you say to the things that they just said about getting into the community, making sure that we know what we need to do when we go to these ballots and who to vote for?
Well, when it comes to, like, knowing who to vote for and, like, knowing who our elected officials are or people who aspire to be the next elected officials or the representation, I think we do need to start looking beyond, like, race and color. We have tendencies to look towards people who look like us to say these are the people that represent me because he Black and I'm Black, or that person Latino and we Latino. But if you don't understand people, like, the problems and the issues that they face, like, if you don't understand their way of living, you can't actually represent them. And these are the people we should be looking forward to as representing us when it comes to the decision makers, our next judges. We have to. So, and I just lost my words here, but
That's
when
okay.
it comes to our elected officials, like, and I say this often to our elected officials, like, if the only thing you ever been through is school, then you probably have no business sitting behind a bench or creating laws or drafting policies unless you're actually impacted. Or you have to be walking with individuals who understand how laws and policies impact people. And this is one reason why I am thankful for some people who wish to be elected officials or sit behind elected seats when they come down to community spaces with community members to listen to them on how they are impacted or the things that they're dealing with in the community, so they can go back and figure out best ways to like be a service to the community members from whatever elected seat they have. So like even with the judges and the judicial seats, you know, I know we are there when we are impacted by the system or accused of something, and the job is to figure out what to do with them after, you know, everything's all said and done with. But just because you're a judge don't mean you have to send people to jail, or just because you're a prosecutor don't mean you have to be trying to figure out how to get a jail or prison sentence or some kind of probation term. Like when we start looking at restorative justice practices, we can figure out like better ways to serve the community by looking at the root cause problems. It's like, okay, this person actually has a drug problem, so jail or prison might not be the space for them. How do we get them the help they need by putting them in some kind of drug program treatment? Or, you know, this person is dealing with, you know, being impacted by the system, and they are vulnerable in a vulnerable space, and they are literally blackballed from life, and all this person really need is to figure out how to be able to eat, survive, take care of themselves. Like, how do I put them in spaces that don't look like jail that could possibly give them an economic opportunity? So that's where I'm at.
Yeah, Ms. Barrow. Go ahead.
Yeah, just before we continue to go, right, I think that when we were approached with this opportunity to hold this episode for us, episode 76, by the way, it was very important for me because very similar to what you guys are saying, right, is like, yes, it's important to have people of color, women of color, you know, women in general, like all in this space, because me as a father of two daughters, Fave, I know, has a daughter. Everybody in here that, you know, is here with us has a daughter, right? And with my two daughters, yes, my two daughters are mixed, but they identify mostly as black, right? So giving the space for this to happen is to also show my kids that, hey, it don't matter what you look like, it don't matter where you come from, you have the opportunity to do something as well if you're willing to do so. But it's also very important, like you were saying, is if you don't know the struggle of the community that you're going to, let's say, have some type of responsibility for, it's very hard for me to believe that you're going to contribute something valuable to that neighborhood, right, or valuable to that community. So I just wanted to make sure that, you know, I wanted to say that because as all of you were talking, it's like, okay, I'm kind of seeing, you know, we're speaking like this, we're speaking like that, and you guys are very polished, I will say that. Right?
Very polished.
But I'm here to get I want you guys to be comfortable, right? Like, I want you guys to really be yourselves because I think that also helps the younger generations really get out there and vote.
Yeah,
right?
it helps the voter for sure. And I'm listening and I'm sitting and I'm hearing all of the criminal justice talk and how you guys are advocates in the neighborhoods that you go. Specifically, what neighborhoods have you been in? What have you seen? Who have you touched or impacted personally? You know what I mean? Like, where have you been? What have you done? Those are the things that I want to know. When I go to the poll Tuesday, I want to know about the person that's actually been to a neighborhood that I've been to, that's actually been to a neighborhood where I know that something has happened and nothing has happened from the people that are in power. Those are the things that I want to know about the real. That's why that's why you're here sitting up here with me today.
Can I?
Yeah, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Rashawn.
You sure?
I'm positive.
So, like, so one of the things that we focus on at Pure Justice, you know, especially when it comes to exercising civic duties or voter engagement, like my prison number is 1953521.
So that now you just gave me chills. That's what, now we get into what we want to get to.
And like the people we prioritize are the people that's heavily impacted. Okay, so like when we go out to register voters, we're not always at a guardrail event. We are in guardrail spaces, you know, where we just really boots on the ground, canvassing certain areas of people that we know this space is highly likely to be targeted by law enforcement, and law enforcement is preying in this community. And our number one goal is to make sure that the people in certain areas understand that no matter what you have experienced at the hands of law enforcement, no matter what you've been accused of, no matter how many times you signed a plea deal, no matter how many times you've been to jail or prison, as long as you're not on probation and parole, you can still register to vote and cast a ballot. And we also want to make sure people know and understand, because a lot of people don't know when you go get a driver's license, you are registering to vote. So a lot of people are registered to vote. They've been impacted by the system. They don't understand that they can vote. So we want to make sure that you understand that you can do this. And we want to make sure that you understand that these elections are deeper than presidential elections.
Right.
We want them to understand that the same people that prey in your community, prey on you, prey on your family members, prey on people that look like you, you know, with the system, the judges, the DA, the sheriff, like all these are elected seats. And a lot of people don't know that until I let them know. And this is motivation enough to register if they're not registered, and it's motivation enough to actually cast a ballot, because some people, you know, may have active cases. And if you haven't been sentenced yet, you can still, again, register to vote. You can cast a ballot. And if you know you are sitting in a courtroom of somebody that will give you the longest sentence possible because you stole a hamburger, because you having economic issues or housing problems, then this might be your opportunity to vote them out before your sentence date. You know, and the second thing that we do, we make a point to go inside the Harris County Jail. I'm talking about all three of them. To make sure that we give people that's incarcerated that may not be able to afford to pay a cash bail, that little $100, $400, $5,000, we give them the same opportunity as people that can actually afford to make that cash bail. So we go in, we register voters because they are still waiting due process. What is it, like 58% of people's waiting due process, not on probation, not on parole, don't have an ICE hold. And then when it's time to actually cast a ballot, the election polls are set up at the jail, the Harris County Jail, where they get pulled out of the pod, where they can go cast a ballot for whoever they wish to vote for, and then they go back. So the people we go touch are the people that is a mirror reflection of me, and these are the people we seek out to make sure you still got that opportunity.
I love that. Would you like to?
Yes, so I love a lot of what Brother Rashawn was saying, if not all of it. And in terms of doing this work, I think the only way that you can do this work properly is to be grounded in the community. Otherwise, you just end up being a dictator that gets to sit up high and look down low on people, because that's literally the dynamics of a courtroom, right? The judge sits up here and everybody else is down there. And so you have to be rooted in the love of people in order to really bring about justice, right? And that goes beyond the letter of the law, and it goes far beyond reducing people to a number. A lot of the conversation that we're having around the criminal justice system right now, if you watch the television, is around reduction in numbers. And that's an important conversation, because we have people languishing in pretrial detention, waiting for their date in court. And any day that continues, then people are left in limbo in terms of resolving their lives. So I don't want to minimize the importance of it. The reason I have a job as an appointed judge now in the felony courts was for that purpose. But we cannot be so caught up in numbers that we don't recognize that these people represent themselves, they represent loved ones, and entire communities impacted by the decisions that are made in the court. So to your question about, well, where have you been? I've been everywhere, right? 3rd Ward, 5th Ward, A-Leaf last week, Hobby Airport area, going to the Bay Area today after I leave here. I've been to Barrett Station in Crosby, a beautiful community with a great history of centered in liberation of black folks, like literally black people buying their own land and building out an entire community. I've been to Kingwood, I've been to Humble, I've been everywhere, because I believe it's important to make sure that I understand the nuances, right, of these different areas. And full disclosure, I live in the inner city. So when I was talking about earlier about challenges and opportunities, I live in the inner city. I don't live in some massive gated community, and there's nothing wrong with doing that, right? Do you? But I have signed a warrant for an alleged drug house that's 5 blocks from my home. I drive by that street every day. But in that same neighborhood, I live on a wonderful street with wonderful people who are hardworking, who have their kids riding their bikes up the street, who when I had family over, when the lights were off and they were staying with me because my lights happened to be on, and they rang my doorbell to let me know, hey, miss, somebody's trunk is open, right? Like that's who had a neighbor who, when everybody's lights was off, was grilling hamburgers and hot dogs out there so we can all eat and take care of each other. So that's what I mean about challenges and opportunities, right? And that's how I enter into this work. Before anybody knew who I was and I was on the bench, I was a volunteer youth minister in a church in Acres Homes for 8 years, unpaid, because I was that committed in terms of creating safe spaces for young people. I didn't care about what your theology was. I wanted you to know that you were valuable enough to be invested in, because that same community gave so much to me. So I tell folks all the time, I'm not a politician, I'm a public servant. I don't care anything about, if I could do this work without running for an elected office, I would. But in order for me to do it in this very specific way, to challenge the status quo of the systems that we have, I had to run for an elected position to then try to make those changes. And I really believe that it's collaborative. The work that everyone is doing, even having this podcast, with the intention of making sure that people are empowered with information and that they see themselves reflected in the systems that govern them and impact their lives, so that they know they have the capacity and, in fact, the call to do this work as well, is critically important. So I join with all of you in doing that work. The last thing that I would say to your question in terms of the why I ran and why I believe that communities can trust me is that, as I mentioned earlier, seeing so many young people go through our system and also looking at our probation system, right? I started noticing these patterns. Everybody, a lot of people had the same conditions. Very different nuances to their case, but they all had got the same conditions. Give us a urine sample, take these couple of classes, go forth and commit no more crimes. And then we're sending these folks back into our communities without any new tools and being empowered to come up with a different result. And then we're surprised when they revolve in and out of the system. And so being able to partner with community organizations that are boots to the ground and are already doing the work. So as I have crisscrossed through Harris County, being able to develop these connections to then bring them into our probation system as what we call community partners, to be able to have folks say, okay, even when I'm off of probation, I have connected with a mentor in this neighborhood or that neighborhood, so that even when they're done with probation, they can continue to get the support they need to be better.
So here's a scenario. As a judge, you have a young man that's 18 years old. His mom is on drugs, dad's in prison. He's caught robbing stores. It's plural, right? Financial hardships due to circumstances, and his third time in trouble. What's the punishment and why?
So I will say this, as a judge, I cannot tell you how I will rule on anything, and I know that's frustrating to people because you want to know how I feel about any particular situation, but I am bound. I can't ask people to follow the law, and I'm not going to follow the rules that govern me. What I can say is that I take a very case-by-case approach. No two cases, no two people, even if they're charged with the same offense, even if they have a similar history, can be treated the same. And so I also, as Roshan brought up earlier, understand, and I've said this multiple times in other spaces, long before somebody enters the criminal justice system, there are typically many systems that have failed them. So if we can focus on some of the root cause issues, assess whether or not there's an underlying mental health issue that is really the impetus for what's going on, understanding any other sort of underlying drug issues that the person may have, and whatever other services we can bring to fold are important even at the pre-trial stage, because if they have housing, right? When I'm looking on my docket and I see somebody has multiple criminal trespasses, my first question to their attorney is this somebody who's dealing with housing insecurity? It's an obvious question. So when we're answering those types of questions and we focus on those things, then we're able to at least stabilize the person until we resolve the case. And again, if probation is appropriate, then we can continue those types of services.
And I do want to hear from you all on this subject as well.
Okay, awesome. So to answer your first question, I believe to really be a part of the true ministry of the Most High God is to free the people from being oppressed, to feed the hungry, and to clothe the naked. So that is my ministry. My husband and I serve mainly through two avenues: our nonprofit Freedom of Faith Food Bank. So we partner with our church, the Shrine of the Black Madonna. We are one in the Black Heritage Foundation. We feed the Sunnyside, 5th Ward, and 3rd Ward community every Saturday from 9 until 1 p.m. That's my main reach in the community. I truly believe that we have food deserts, and that's a part of the programming for us to eat fried foods and pork and things that are chemically induced to play with our mental health, to have diseases so we don't have the mobility to fight back on our own. So I teach people about the importance of health, food, and environmental justice through those avenues. Outside of just on Saturdays of us feeding the community, when we get our donations on Tuesdays and Thursdays, we take them to apartments. So the Old Spanish Trail low-income apartments, the Acres Homes, and the Pilgrim Senior Citizen Homes. That's what we're doing on a weekly basis as far as touching the community in that area. The second area is through our law firm, Mofani Legal Group. So we're nonprofit attorneys. So we have plenty of clients, whether it's legal or grant writing or volunteering with them. Groups like NAACP, United Negro Fund, United Negro College Fund, COHAB organization. There's plenty of names I can name, Hoodies for Healing. There's a bunch of nonprofits right here in Houston that we're either helping get funding for their nonprofits or making sure that their legal paperwork is in compliance so that they can then go impact. So if they're having a foundation of their nonprofit, they don't have the funding, then they can't go reach the people. And so we stand in that medium to be able to help them go impact others in addition to volunteering with them. That's really the main reach there. And then also just doing different panels, doing different community work. I went to Thurgood Marshall School of Law, so a lot of times TSU invites us to go do projects with the students. I just got a call from a student, hey, I want to do some period pad kits for the community. How can I do it? They know that they can call me. I'm going to put them in contact with another organization, or we have grant funding from our nonprofit to provide them with the funding so that they can then go give things out to the community. So on an everyday basis, because I live in that neighborhood, I'm doing what I can to make sure that we have resources. When I'm driving down Cullen, because I live in the Sunnyside area, if I'm driving down Cullen, and I don't know if y'all have been over there, you'll probably see a lot of our brothers and sisters that are on drugs. There's a lot of substance abuse and a lot of homelessness. So when we're going down the street, all we see is a liquor store, they got the meat mart, they got the bodegas, and people are just on the street, not being productive members of society because of whatever trauma they went through. And so if you call the police are not coming to our neighborhoods. There's just a bunch of unproductive things happening. And so what we decided to do was to make sure our nonprofit was right there where we live so that we could feed people, because you can't try to give them legal information or even tell them about business if they're on a basic level just trying to get food and have somewhere to live. And so we focus on the root cause and help our community members that way. And then when we get to the thriving, then we can talk to them about legal, and then we can talk to them about the position. So I don't just run to people saying, hey, I'm running for a position. Most of the time they encounter me is because either we're volunteering, doing some type of nonprofit work, or they're needing us to help expand their nonprofit. So that's mainly how the community members know me. That's what I'll be doing regardless if I win or lose. We'll still be serving every single week.
Love that, love that. Roshan.
So, and I was touching on this yesterday, but, for survival, it's a real thing. Like you have a lot of people out here, they wake up in the morning and they do things outside the law, and it's not always because this is just what they would choose to do if they had access to opportunities and resources. For example, like people do choose to, steal a Cadillac converter, possibly not for everybody. All cases is not the same because won't nobody give them a job. I'm gonna tell y'all a personal story real quick. This one particular year, now when I first signed my plea deal behind a false accusation as a 17-year-old boy, I really didn't understand how it would impact me, as an adult. But when I actually started trying to get into the work environment, being a adult, taking care of myself, this one particular year, I had 16 W-2s. I had 16, that's more than one a month. I had 16 W-2s because I couldn't hold a job. It got so bad to the point I had to start pretty much committing new crimes to get a job by lying on applications so I can make sure that I can pay my rent. But that was outside of being continuously kicked out of my apartments as well for having a record. And again, my first charge, it wasn't because I actually committed a crime. That accusation put me in a position to where I signed a plea deal to avoid a lengthy sentence. Yeah. I'm not the only one in this position. So now, I've been put in so many different desperate positions to where I felt like the only way for me to survive, I had to do certain things. Now, I'm not making excuses for people who do things, but what I do know is forced survival is a real thing, and people will sell drugs to survive. People will rob you at an ATM to survive. People will steal a Cadillac converter to survive. People will sell their body to survive. Now, crime has been going down. We know this. Yet you still hear people, fear-mongering, talking about how crime is going up. So after George Floyd, it made it a little bit easier for organizations that came across getting funded the hardest because people just didn't want to fund particular organizations of color. It made it a little bit easier after George Floyd to where community work started expanding a little bit. You have more organizations out here and you have more boots on the ground out here, working collaboratively together, as well as working with elected officials in office trying to figure out how do we preserve our communities? How do we save our neighborhoods?
Let me break right there.
Okay, but the reason, one of the reasons out of many that crime is going down is not but because we're, continuously infusing a system that we understand don't work, like putting more money into law enforcement and expanding, the system that has already caused so much trauma, more jails. Like, the reason crime is going down is because we have more people out in the community working together, trying to figure out how do we uplift people out of poverty? How do we, assist people with housing? How do we get people the mental health they need? Like, we have programs to address, mental health. We have, it's so many different little spaces trying to figure out how to resource people, because this is the only way to liberate people, and it's not going to come through. We can't save communities or set people up for success through incarceration. We can never jail and imprison our way to safety. We got to resource our way to the next level, and this is why communities are starting to become safer, because we have way more people out here working for the people.
Love that. Now, I've heard nonprofit on this stage a couple of times, right? So, being an advocate for whatever you've been an advocate for, right? Is being a paid advocate frowned upon? And if so, why is it?
So I'll just hop in there because I don't believe that being a paid advocate is a bad thing. I think most of us end up doing volunteer because there's just not a lot of money in the nonprofit space. However, we advocate to transition people to understand that ministry, nonprofit, and mission-driven work can be your career. There is a thing called other people's money, donations, investments, and grants that you can actually take care of your family and others. But what people need to recognize is that modesty is going to be the best thing for our community. We have had lack for so long that we think as soon as we get a little bit of money, we got to go get designer, we got to go get these big houses, which are all from things that are not even owned from Black and brown individuals. That's a part of the programming. But if we can understand the simplicity of how we can live, how we can grow, then the money that's coming in, we can all kind of be on an even playing field. So I do think we should actually compensate our advocates, especially if you're speaking about Black liberation, brown liberation, going against the forces. You need to be taken care of by your community, because these aren't easy conversations. We're not just going around saying just, hey, butterflies in the sky. No, we're telling telling someone like, oh, you're oppressing us, and we're coming against the oppressor. That is giving the oppressor license to come back at us. And so if our community is not taking care of us, if we're not financially taking care of our families, then how will we have the strength to fight? And if we are the ones that are having the confidence to actually fight back, then our community should then stand us up too. So I do think that there should be paid advocates, but not to the extent where it is a luxury lifestyle and we're not having an even playing field.
I can answer that as someone that's done both. And I know that the funny thing, whether you're paid or not, it's really hard. You get burnt out either way. I'm going to tell you that right now, whether you're paid or not. I will say sometimes when it is your job, it can be hard to engage in the ways that you would like because, you know, you have a responsibility to a job. But to the point you were making about, like, serving our communities and the nonprofit sphere, like, everything serves a purpose. And, like, it's not just the hands-on work you're seeing. There's work behind that. There's spreadsheets being created. There's things being purchased. Those things aren't free. Like, sometimes it's small, like making little goodie bags for kids with election things, little rubber duckies, but I couldn't get those for free. Like, I had to, you know, we had to purchase them. And in order to get, like, funding to have things like we hosted an event with Kendra and our African families where we had technology that allowed people to build out their ballots. That wasn't free. It cost money. And in order to get that money to pay for it, you have to show that you have sometimes an operation that's set up with people that are paid, that are being held responsible. And I think that's where the paid comes in, is like when people are paid as their job, you can also hold them accountable and hold them responsible and, you know, kind of make ask of them to have, like, actually results for the community versus volunteer-wise. Like, it's great. And also people I know that get paid to do this, we also volunteer. Yeah. There's a lot of time I volunteer. There's a lot of things I do outside of my work, outside of my role that I don't get paid for. Kendra fusses at me all the time about it. So I think it's just, it's all kind of a system that needs to work together. I think you need both. You need folks in positions that are being held accountable, that are able to bring in that funds and resources, but also you do need folks like, hey, stepping up to volunteer, even if it's for a couple hours, even if it's for like one day out of the year, you know, helping out your community. I think you need a balance of both.
No doubt.
Yeah. Yeah, so I agree with both, right? But I also want to say, like, our liberation, you know, ain't always going to be paid for. And sometimes the things that we going through, you know, we got to understand that a change has to be made, and sometimes that change that have to be made, we going to have to get out there and do it ourselves, regardless if we got the money or not.
Absolutely.
And, like, and I was just talking about how minority organizations are some of the hardest organizations to get funded. Nobody want to give us money. And why would the oppressor give us money to fight them? Exactly. So sometimes a lot of work that we do is just going to have to be done because we know it need to be done, and we ain't always going to have the money to do it. But when we got the money to do it, we need to go ahead and spend the money wisely to make sure our people is taken care of, but we ain't always going to have that money.
Ms. Barrow, what they talking about, right? You're on the ballot to become a criminal judge, and he talking about money. And it just sparked a thing in my head where there's a lot of criminals in our neighborhood that get a lot of money, and they do a lot of things for our communities. Why doesn't that come in? We need somebody on that, what is it called when you in that seat, when y'all banging that guy and say, hey, look, I know what he did to get it, but this where it went to.
Yeah, because you have all kind of. I remember being the kid that would run to the store to get somebody a soda, and I make $20 off of a store run.
Hey, all y'all line up right now. Everybody race. Whoever win get $25. I don't know where that $25. I don't never see him go to work, but he got $25 to give me.
I wake up, he right there. I come home from school, he right there.
You know what I'm saying? So my question to you is, those guys coming to your courtroom, they're before you getting sentenced. Is that something you think about? Is that something that you don't think about? Do you think other judges think about that? Should it be something that they think about?
I think we have a responsibility to take everything in, right? And the hope is that folks are represented by a quality attorney enough to where some of that information comes in, or there's sometimes we have spaces where we can ask them. But I'll give you an example of a story that stuck with me. There was a bond issue, and the attorney was trying to get his client's bond lowered. And one of the things that he pointed out to me was that although in the offense he was accused of was a very serious offense. But he said, you know, my client, while he's here in jail awaiting his trial, one of the things that he does is that he mows the lawn of the elderly people on his street. Mm-hmm. And to somebody else, they might look really small and insignificant. But when you're an older person who can't move around, having your grass cut and somebody bring your mail in is a part of a dignity that allows you to continue to live in this home that you've been in there for a long time. So that just gives you an example of the things that I think about. And one of the things I've also shared as I've gone around talking to folks is this. You know, if you can break into a car, that means you can learn how to fix one for a living. Mm-hmm. It's just a matter of learning how to retool it in an appropriate way that allows you to make money without having to do damage to someone else to do it. So in the street hustle or whatever it is, there's capacity. Mm-hmm. The question is there an avenue that allows someone to be able to make money in a dignified way that doesn't then create harm on somebody else, either in their neighborhood or somewhere else? And I think that's why there's an opportunity to continue to collaborate with nonprofits. These are folks who are boots on the ground doing the work. And that's what I mentioned about community partners. Community partners we have within our probation system are great, but we have expansive needs. And so the more people we can bring in to have more options, when we have young folks or first-time offenders and nonviolent offenders, and we're putting them on probation anyway, then why am I not doing it in a way that gives you the tools to have the opportunity to make a different decision? If I'm not using that opportunity, then what's the point? The likelihood of you revolving back into my court is high, and I have no interest in that. I hope I get to the point where you don't need me anymore, where we find ways to work through issues and work through the underlying trauma in ways that build healing and restoration to our communities, rather than continue these cycles of violence and harm to one another. So your organizations are critically important in making sure that we start to love on each other different, that we start to reprioritize what really matters to us, and that we do the work of saving ourselves, because ain't nobody else gonna do it for us.
Now, we're all sitting up here saying different things, but it sounds like we're talking about the same things and we're for the same things, right? But there's people out there that don't know that this is taking place. Right. They don't know that there's someone on the board trying to be a judge, along with someone like Kendra, someone like Mr. Roshan, someone like Shelly, who's coming together. What are the conversations that I need to have, or that a dentist needs to have with a coworker that he can find common ground with someone and say, hey, look, go ahead.
Even with our kids.
Yeah.
You and I both have 17-year-olds about to be 18 next year. They are going to be the next voters, right? So how do you guys word this to that generation? And that generation, I'm sorry, I love y'all babies, but y'all are a bunch of smart asses that are stubborn, right? Yeah. So how do we get through to them to understand and not listen to everybody on social media? Oh, there's no point to do this. Oh, this is rigged. Like, how do we get through to that generation?
And before y'all answer that, I like what you said about, they stubborn, but I think they're the most fearless group of kids that we've ever had. Yeah. Those are the chosen ones. And it's just directed in the wrong way. Right. I think that they don't give a damn about anything. They want it, but they just don't have the knowledge to put it in the correct place. You see what I'm saying? So how do we bridge that gap?
Yeah. If I could start, there's a couple of ways. I mean, you honestly just have to get out of there. So one thing that we've been doing is going to different high schools. So talking to the seniors that are getting ready to vote, letting them know about our nonprofit efforts, letting them know about things that are happening in the city and what they can do. Because a lot of my race is trying to get our community to start strategically planning who we want to have in office. I don't believe that it's advantageous for us to continue to just say, oh, okay, this person's on the ballot, we're about to vote for them, and things of that nature. We should be actually coming together as a unit in equipping and empowering and raising up our young people to then go be in office. So our young people should know, like, okay, I'm being prepped to run for this, I'm being prepped to run for that, and then everyone in the community is doing that. So just honestly small ways of getting out there, and then also just not sugarcoating things. We do talk a lot about black and brown liberation, and so that doesn't mean that we're against our counterparts. There are white abolitionists and other cultural abolitionists that help, but I believe that we don't specifically speak directly to the reparations that are needed for Black and brown individuals. We're not on an even playing field because of systematic oppression, because of the drug war that they put in our community for taking out fathers of the home, all of these things. I could go the list on and on. Y'all know them. But the young people don't want to hear us just saying like, oh, go to school and get a degree. Like, no, they want to know, what are you guys going to do to the history that we're seeing now on TikTok? We didn't know this happened, but now TikTok done revealed to us that oppressors are doing this. Like, what y'all going to do about it? Y'all just throwing stuff under the rug, sweeping it under the rugs. We can't do that. We have to be direct with them, tell them, you know, the truth about what needs to happen, and then give them that helping hand. But it can't be sugar-coated. It can't be politically correct. They just want that real raw, and you have to go meet them where they're at.
Yeah. I work with youth a lot. I'm always talking to them, and especially in the high schools. And to your point, my favorite thing I like talking about is their power. I show them their power. I pull out the graphs and the numbers. We look at each age group. We see who turns out, who doesn't, how many could have turned out if they wanted to. And I said, how, like, if you're 65 and older, what do you think they care about? Yep. Okay, what do y'all care about? Looking at these numbers, what do you think a politician's going to speak to? Y'all or them? Because look who's turning. And they've received that, like kind of what you said, just being upfront with them, showing them. Y'all, I mean, I hear you want change, but how is it going to change if you don't show up? Right. So that's number one, and like breaking down the local things. But to the point about frustrates me, this whole thing, my vote doesn't matter, it's rigged. One, why would they make it so hard for you to take action if it didn't matter, right? Why were there proposals to make it so there weren't voting locations on college campuses? That didn't go through, thank goodness. But like, if it didn't matter, why would they do that?
Right.
And the other thing I tell them is, that's a kind of new phenomenon. Like, young people are the leaders of social movements. As a millennial myself, it's like, we did our job, bro. Like, look, we did our job. You know, I got Obama, you're welcome. But you have wins and losses. You don't always get what you want. One of the first elections that burned in my memory forever was Bush Gore. Okay, y'all know how that turned out. Did I take that as a young person, like, well, there's nothing I can do, never gonna do anything? No, I didn't. And so I think that's the thing that young people now need to understand is, like, there are going to be wins and losses. You're not always gonna get what you want, and that's okay. It makes you just fight harder, but also be strategic in your fight. Use your vote strategically. There's ways to use it strategically. And when people say your vote doesn't matter, it's rigged, I was like, I'm out on campuses almost every election for the last 3 years. On election day, I talk to young people. I say, hey, gonna vote? First question, there is an election. Yes, there is. Second question I hear the most, well, I don't know who to vote for. And I tell young people, it's easier to say doesn't matter than to say I don't know. That's much harder to admit, like, I don't know. I don't know what a railroad commissioner does. Like, most people don't.
And that's a misnomer. But yes.
It's okay. And it's okay. And I tell them, it's okay if you don't know. And I say, and that's what I'm saying. When you hear people, I was like, I was like, it's all cap. It's all cap. They're just fronting. They don't want to admit they don't know. So it's easier to say it doesn't matter to admit, like, you know what, maybe I need to go ask my government teacher.
So I have one more scenario I want to ask, and this will be for everyone, and then we'll get closing statements from everyone. We'll keep them short and sweet, because I know some people have a 3 o'clock.
Okay.
So we have a young lady stealing out of a store. She has a job and a kid, but she was also with her friends, and they were stealing as well. She didn't steal $500 worth of things, but they combined everyone's items to make it $500 and take everyone to jail. No one's ever been in trouble. What's the punishment? And why? No, what's the punishment and why? What made you all get into this field? I'm sorry. Scratch the last part. Just answer that question. Answer that scenario. I was putting stuff together.
Can you repeat the question?
I'll repeat it. So we have a young lady stealing out of a store, right? She has a job and a kid. She didn't steal $500 worth of items, but her friends were with her as well, stealing as well. The police take them all to jail, and they add everything up, and it adds up to $500. So now everybody's getting that charge. How do we go about that? What's the punishment? How do we go? What happens there?
Do you want this specifically for?
No. It's for you and Mrs. Stacy.
Okay, because we don't do criminal, and the court that I'm running for is not a criminal court.
It's not criminal?
No.
I thought I read criminal.
No, it's not a criminal
So
court.
that's my bad. Miss Barrow, you can answer it. Miss Barrow, you can
I didn't know if
answer
you
it.
just wanted me to give my opinion,
No,
but it's
no,
not a
no,
criminal
no.
court.
It's for Miss Barrow.
Again, I can't talk about any specific scenarios and what I would.
We
or
need you to
wouldn't
tell
do.
us if we going to jail for a year or not.
No,
I'm laughing.
but
You can't
but,
ask that. I'm
but the
I
frustration
know you
is the
can't.
frustration is important though. But it goes to show that if you're doing this job right, you live in nuance. I don't live in like a couple of bullet points. Here's a question: what did she steal?
Got you.
Because I have cases where people, what they've stolen are diapers and milk. So that naturally prompts the question, is this person trying to feed a child? Right? Versus doing one of these things where they rob a jewelry store, right? And I'm not saying that there still aren't questions to ask there, but the reason why I follow the rules that govern me is because we do live in the nuance. It's all in the gray. Because if I automatically make a decision based on a couple of words from a prosecutor and I don't let the defense attorney speak and bring that person to life, then I'm doing exactly what I said I wouldn't do, which is reduce you to a number on the page.
Hey, my reflex almost made me clap.
And we need people to do the work just like that. We were talking about young people earlier and their power and how we get them to participate in this process. First, we have to acknowledge as adults how we have failed to be good witnesses to the work that we're supposed to be doing.
Absolutely.
We say one thing, we live a different one. We say
Guilty.
we care about young people, but oftentimes we are absent. Even running for office, I've been told multiple times, don't waste your time trying to get young people to vote. They don't vote. And unfortunately, y'all are proving them to be true. But that didn't stop me from being at U of H on Friday, twice at TSU, from participating in panels even before the election started, because that's where change happens. The reality is that change happens in the micro level, in the conversations that Shelley is having, in the conversations that you all are having through your nonprofits, and staying close to people even when it's uncomfortable and when it ain't cute. Because the reality is that they're worth it. The reason I'm running is because these young people, even when they already come in with a stacked up juvenile record, I'm looking at them and I say, you're worth it. And I ask them the questions. Why am I talking about whether or not I should give you an ankle monitor when you're about to go to your senior prom? We're having the wrong conversation.
There you go.
Right. So long before they come to court, we need to be doing this type of work. And that's why I'm committed to doing it when nobody's looking, when I'm not on the ballot, because all of our young people belong to me and they belong to everybody on this stage. And we got to have, going back to a mentality of community. This hyper-individualism is not going to save us.
I love it.
Chasing a bag and that being all it is about is not going to save us. What kept us when we were enslaved was the mindset of community. When people said, I am my ancestors' wildest dream, a lot of times it's attached to a title. I don't think my ancestors' wildest dream was that I could be a judge. Right. My ancestors' wildest dream was that I could dream in an expansive way. They dreamt of community. They dreamt of the family member that was snatched from them. But we've adapted a mentality that doesn't serve us and isn't from us. So I look forward to the continued collaboration that we're demonstrating on the stage, and we got to be able to do that even when there's parts of us that make us uncomfortable. I understand folks feel like, well, I don't think I want to talk to a judge, right? But then if I'm in it with you and I'm having conversations with you, even when you're challenging me, then we can find a way to move forward in a way that's important and that actually brings about change. These systems will not save us. That is not the work. The systems can be held accountable, but the power has always been in us and it's through us. And I look forward to continuing to build on that.
Love that, Miss Barrow. Love that.
Can I make a
yeah, of course.
2
Go
minute?
ahead.
When I remember one time I had this conversation with a white lady, and she was telling me about her husband and how he's a prosecutor. She was bragging that this man ain't never lost a case. And I looked at her, it instantly did something to my insides. It boiled my skin. And I said, how do you feel about that? She was like, I'm happy, because he had admirations of running for a political seat. And I said, everything everybody's accused of don't mean they're actually guilty, and you sitting up here touting that this man ain't never lost a case in all these years, so he done sent how many people to prison? It pissed me off. But I actually respect, that the judge is not saying what she would do, because there's so many different scenarios. Like, accusations get people in front of you, and it's like outside of the accusations, I think sometimes the judges should actually look beyond the what they did and start asking the question, why did it happen? Because you in here because of, sometimes that forced survival put us in a position to make a decision because these are the options in front of us, and all of them come with a backlash, and I chose that one, and I ended up getting caught, but I was really hungry. And some people are willing to give me the longest, lengthiest, nastiest sentence they can give me when I was really just trying to survive.
Yeah.
So, thank you.
Man, look, I enjoyed this conversation to the bottom of my heart. Man, y'all are very, very insightful, but I don't want to leave without an ending point. So whomever wants to start, Ms. Barrow, I know you're on the ballot Tuesday. And
Yes.
if I haven't voted yet, but Tuesday I will be going to vote. And I tell you, you've swayed my opinion. You've done enough for me up in here. I don't know about the other candidate or candidates, but you've done enough for me. Really quick, 2 minutes, minute and a half. Go ahead and give your last little push, and then we'll move on to Shelly.
And I'm Stacey Allen Barrow, BARROW, your Democratic candidate for the 487th Criminal District Court. I genuinely believe that we all have a role in playing and ensuring that we live in communities where we feel safe and where we can thrive. And I believe thriving and not merely surviving is truly our birthright. I'm encouraging you to vote. The 10 minutes that you put into that polling location in the voting booth will impact the next 4 years of your life and even beyond that. And I know we talk a lot about the fact often that there are people who literally lost their lives for us to have access to the ballot box because they understood the power of it. But I also want to bring up the young people who are not of age yet, who can't vote, who are depending on us who can to make sane and quality decisions in this moment so they can have an opportunity to build on that and imagine an even better future in the future to come. So please vote the whole ballot. Don't skip any races. I encourage you to vote for me. The League of Women Voters has a guide if you want to read about what we believe in our own words. There's newspapers that have gone through and endorsed us and vetted us, but ultimately don't sit on the sidelines and complain. And I know there's reasons to feel like you should sit on the sidelines. I know there are systems set up to make you believe that you don't have power, but I want you to understand the power that you have in your voice and in your vote. So please go vote Tuesday. We're expecting bad weather. Hang in there. We've had people had to deal with fighting dogs and hoses in the past to give us the right to vote. You can stand in some rain, bring an umbrella, bring a cap, bring some snacks, and do what you got to do. Thank you.
Heard that.
I'm going to echo that. My name's Shelly Baker. I'm the political director of Deeds Not Words. Big thing I've been hearing is, sometimes with this election, people don't know what's going to happen. You have the right to vote if you're registered. 866 our vote is the number for the election protection hotline. So that is what I want to give you, is that if you hear of anything, people telling you get out of line even though you're in line, whatever the case may be, if there's anything, please use that hotline. Also, regardless of outcome, elections are always studied after, looking at turnout, looking how much it increased, and that can determine the investment in your communities. Yes. Truly that. So even if, the youth vote, even if it rises 5%, people are going to invest more. Even if it doesn't flip, even if it doesn't have the outcome that you want, just you showing up and even increasing and getting closer to that goal will still have a positive effect on your community. So whatever the outcome may be, just still continue to see that it's making change. And then also don't stop on election day. There are other things to do after that, after you vote. There's going to be people that win. Those people that win, they're now your elected officials and leaders in your community, and you can ask things of them to continue to change your community. And if they don't do it, you can vote them out next election.
That's right. Love that.
Awesome. I'm Kyra Ofani. I am an independent write-in candidate for Justice of the Peace, Precinct 7, Place 1. And so I'm going to use my last minute and a half to not talk about the race, but just to remind you guys that we were separated by force, and so we have to unite by force. I want you guys to take out time to read the history books and about the programming that has happened to our nation. There are lynching books for slave masters that talk about how to separate the black man from the black woman, the light skin to the dark skin, how food rations should be given to us. And so we're in a state of being in which we're wondering why there is broken families, broken homes, and we don't know how to fend and sustain ourselves. But that was the agenda of the oppressor. And so until we get to the root cause of knowing what happened, then we can strategically plan what our liberation looks like. So I know it's hard to work with other black businesses sometimes. I know it's hard for us to work together because we're dealing with many traumas, but we have to push through that. We have to utilize the resources and come together because it takes us to save us, and we're all we got. And that's a good thing that we're all we need. Again, I'm Kyra Ofwani. I'm running for Justice of the Peace, Precinct 7, Place 1 as a write-in candidate.
My name is Roshan C. Evans. I'm the organizing director and co-founder of Pure Justice. Once upon a time, nobody can vote except the white man. Then we start allowing the women to vote. 1965, black people wasn't able to vote until that year. We started having IQ tests or intelligence tests, whatever they called them. I wasn't here then. We was counting jelly beans. We have another great tool that keep people away from voting right now, and that is a criminal record. Being impacted by the system, that is one of the greatest tools to keep you away from that voting poll, amongst other things. So I want you to know, if you do not, if you have been impacted by the system, it doesn't matter your experience. As long as you are not on probation and parole, please get out and vote. A lot of people that have driver's license are registered to vote. They don't know it yet. Check your status. If you can vote, get out there and vote. And I also want you to make sure that you understand every single election is bigger than the president. Get to know your local elected officials, their platforms, what they want to do. And remember, the system, a lot of the systems that we interact with on a daily basis is embedded out of white supremacy, and your voice matter. And when you infuse your voice into the process, it puts us that much closer into creating something new. And politics impact every aspect of our lives. So if you have not voted yet, get out there and go cast that ballot.
Love that. Thank each and every one of you for being here today. We enjoyed this. Man, was a lot of information given out today.
Yeah,
Man.
and just real quick, just some final words from Theo Dean and Uncle Fave to the young kids out there, right? And even for our peers, right? Like, if you are in any type of situation that you cannot vote, man, like, help these kids understand what they can vote for, right? Like, yeah, everybody plays a part. Some of us are the muscle, some of us are the brains, but we all have to come together as a community and make things work, right? Our community is a body that needs to work with every working part of that body. And we all play a part in that. So, man, if you don't know, reach out to somebody, start doing some research. Man, the internet is right there. Figure it out. Everybody can figure it out.
Here's the thing, it's just us.
Get out the vote. Sound like a choir up here.
Again, thank y'all for coming out. I appreciate y'all making some time out to come. So, thank you.
Sorry, I got the location wrong.